Hi, folks. Welcome to the Ask the R podcast, where this week I'm delighted to invite onto the podcast John Roy from Water Design Engineers. John is not only an expert in his field, but he's a friend as well. And our two businesses have worked quite closely together over the last few years or so. And I thought it was fine time to bring some of his incredible knowledge in the space to our listeners and readers. So, John, welcome to the podcast. Tell me who you are and what company you run, and then we'll just chit-chat from there.
Sure. John Roy. I run a design consultancy called Water Design Engineers. We also, we're really also an irrigation company as well. Well, that's how we started. But ultimately, we're independent engineers. We focus on solving water in the landscape. This means we help clients design things like irrigation systems, SUDs, water features, constructed wetlands, water treatment systems, and so making sure that all of that system works properly within the landscape.
So
No.
I'm really interested in going back into the past a little bit here and finding out how on earth, because everybody knows engineers are really boring. But I don't think you're a boring person in any way, John. I don't care what everyone else says. You're not a boring chap. So how on earth did you end up in something that is so niche and so specialised?
Um, I think it started back in the sort of like late 90s. I had a job working for an irrigation contractor back in South Africa, and I remember the first day, kind of like the boss standing there saying, "Oh, this is amazing! You'll love this." But he was like so excited about what he did, and he was like, "You'll love this! This is amazing!" Simon, who was like our head fitter, he's like, "Fire it up!" And these sprinklers popped up, and the water jetting everywhere, and you get the smell of the water on the African soil. It has a quite a unique smell, and I just remember sitting there, and I had goosebumps, thinking, "Oh, this is it! I love this." Just
Yeah.
something about it just captured me. So sort of fast forward a bit, I thought there's a lot to learn here. Where do I go to learn it so that I know everything I can learn about it? Back in those days, a bit naive, thinking you could learn everything in a couple of years. 25 years later, and I'm still learning. So I went to uni, did a agricultural engineers degree. I focused my speciality on irrigation. And you had to take two majors in those days, was irrigation design and hydrology. After graduating, I then accepted a job offer in Dubai. Spin out to Dubai, spent about 5 years there working as like a contracts manager for and it was called Orient Irrigation at that time, but we did landscape, we did water features, we did water treatment, we did all sorts of things, build golf courses, all that kind of stuff. In the desert, you soon realize that if you make a mistake in your design, that mistake highlights itself very quickly. So you've got to match. You've really got to match the conditions. You match your design to the conditions, and also water is scarce, so you got to see how to save water, how to make the most of it. And so I've always been kind of asking the question, do we need to be irrigating every day? Do we need to be doing this? Can't we use this wastewater for this? And so that's how my kind of philosophy has evolved, of kind of like having a whole integrated water system, that rather than in silos, everything integrates, and the ideal situation would be you have your wastewater, black or grey. Black water, it goes through a treatment process, goes through a constructed wetland, it goes through filtration, it gets cleaned, it gets used for things like washing clothes, watering plants. You could even shower in it. and things like that, flushing toilets, and just creating that water cycle. Some of it gets used for irrigation, some of it gets used for the water feature. Your SUD system captures rainfall, puts it through the process as well, and so you create a cycle on site. That's, for me, that would be the ideal, you know.
Is that unique to the Middle East, John, or do we see that in the UK as well?
In the UK, there are people who you know, and in America, in Australia, there are people who have the same vision, you know,
Yeah.
and so from that point of view, like I remember seeing an interesting project that had been done at a university campus in just north of Washington. And they basically captured all the rainwater, all the toilet water, etc., put it through SUDS, put it through a wetland, and then recycled it on campus. I remember seeing that quite a few years ago, and that was exciting to me because I was like, oh, you know, I'm not the only nutter with that idea, you know.
What is the motivating factor to do that for the client? I'm guessing there's absolutely no financial benefit in any way, shape, or
Um,
form.
well, it depends on like it, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Jones sitting at home, probably not, you know, because you don't pay additional fees to the water company
Yeah.
for discharging into the combined sewer. But if you have companies like Sainsbury's, for example, who have all
Mm.
these vast car parks that capture water, that excess of water going into the combined sewer, they pay a surcharge on it.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they pay a
Okay.
surcharge on it. So, um, you know, maybe large developments where you have like multiple housing complexes or apartment complexes, all of that water going discharging to the combined sewer, that also takes a surcharge.
And are the regulations supportive into with regard to building a kind of a water cycle in the UK, or are there lots of hurdles to overcome?
Um, in a nutshell, it's fragmented. I mean,
Mm.
you have things like, for example, sustainable, the SUDS element, which is in the Floodwater Act. So that kind of like passed through Parliament. It got royal assent like 10 years ago, if I remember
Right.
correctly. But the next step is now implementation, and it doesn't get implemented because the water companies are the ones that kind of call the shots. It's
Right.
very like that, you know, it's hard infrastructure like pipes and stuff like that. Someone can say, "Oh yeah, we're looking after that, we're maintaining that," and do nothing about it, and no one, you know, and you can see nothing happens. You can see no one's looking after it. You get a bit of flooding here and there, but when you have a SUDS strategy where everything's visible, everything's on the surface, and then you're not maintaining it, it's within weeks people can see. So the water companies don't want SUDS because the cost of maintenance is, you know, when they adopt it, the cost of maintenance is going to be high.
Right. Okay. And
So
I
yeah.
I, I guess it's worth just for the listener, because there will be people listening to this that have got no technical knowledge whatsoever. I'd probably put myself in that bracket as well when it comes to water design, despite coming from a family that owned an inland waterway. But there we go. That's another conversation for another day. What is a SUDS system as it relates to a development project in the UK, and what is the purpose? Because I think you touched on it there, but it would be good to get that cleanly as a nice little segment.
Okay. I mean, sustainable urban drainage is it's basically using nature as part of your, as a summary, like using nature as part of the drainage strategy. So um, how I would like how it's done at the moment I don't believe reflects the SUD's intention.
Right.
So if I could talk about how it's done at the moment. So previously you'd have drainage engineer, he puts a pipe here, he puts an attenuation tank over here, he has a discharge going to the main sewer network there. Just as a simplistic example. Now someone says, oh, we're doing SUDs. Oh, what's SUDs? SUDs are swales, attenuation ponds. That's a swale. That's SUDs. Oh, okay. The pipe used to go here, so we remove the pipe, we just leave the ditch. The attenuation tank used to go here, so we're just going to leave a hole in the ground. That is not, to me, that's not SUDs. That's just a poor excuse for SUDs. What SUDs is like using the landscape as your full catchment. So
Right.
you have permeable paving, allowing infiltration into the subsoil if it's possible. If your soil makeup there is not doesn't allow that, then it's capturing, directing through contouring, directing the water into an area which typically could be a landscape. Now it's flooded, it's not going to be in that much use. The water sits there through managing the types of soils that you put in there. You can use different types of soils in your design process and then during construction. That then allows the infiltration and allows the water to then leave the site at a controlled pace. So through shaping the land you can do it. So there's no additional infrastructure cost, it's just shape the land correctly, you see.
It's interesting that because that is my experience of SUDs is very much your first example. Swales and ditches lead into some form of attenuation pond, which
With a fence around it and a couple of rescue rings.
and will look great for 18 months until it's full of regen and then litter and then people's dog mess and everything else. And the swales, because it's too difficult to cut the grass in there and maintain any kind of shape, they end up looking exactly the same after a number of years as well, which I suppose from a water perspective it slows things down, doesn't it? But if the exit from that attenuation pond is blocked, which is usually the case in my experience, then all that happens is that attenuation pond, that SUDS basin, fills right up and starts overflowing anyway. I'm talking about my own housing scheme here, actually, which is just around the corner, and that's exactly what's happened there.
And you have an area of the site which is typically pretty much unusable. No one can use that bit of land, because quite often you'll see a fence around it. There's a development just up the road from where I'm based, and they've just finished building this great big bloody hole in the ground and fenced around it with some rescue rings on it, and you think, why? They could have they could have really have just shaped the land. It's usable when it's not flooding. When it is flooding, it's wet and soggy until it's not.
Why have we gone down this swales, ditch and attenuation pond? Is that just in mainstream house development and development in general, I suppose, in the UK? Is that just purely cost?
No, it's not. From an environmental point of view, it reduces flooding. So overall catchment, the speed and volume of which water runs over the hard surfaces, impermeable surfaces during a high rainfall event is going to be, a lot of water can fall in a short amount of time. That water accumulated within the combined sewer is now it's now going through the overflow. There's a significant surcharge of effluent like black sewage that goes then into the river system and messes up the whole ecosystems. So you have a lot of that happening. By having SUDs, you're slowing down the water leaving the site. Even a good SUD system could even stop the water from leaving the site and allowing water to do what it should do and then just permeate through into the through the soil profile into the water table below. So it's it's good practice. It's from a green perspective, it's definitely very beneficial to the environment.
When at what point in, I guess there's two questions here. At what point in the design and at what size of scheme do these things have to start to be considered? I guess we start with the size of the scheme. Is there kind of a
LPAs are asking LPAs are asking for single dwellings to submit a SUD strategy now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's becoming a lot more in planning. It's becoming a lot more. We do a lot of stuff for planning, as you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you just think about the inquiries that have come through just since the beginning of this year, there's like a huge amount.
And I'm guessing then that feeds into the obvious answer, which is the same for my business with arboriculture and ecology, is that this stuff needs to be considered right early doors, design stage.
Yeah.
And I guess depending on the size of the project and the budget depends on whether that happens or not. Could you guys create real problems for architects and landscape designers and things like that if suddenly later on in the project you're asked to develop a SUD strategy?
I'm just thinking of a project at the moment that we're just busy helping the client get planning. The LPAs are moving the goalposts a little bit as we go on, but I guess it's as they're kind of understanding the SUD's requirements of the site, they're also like, oh, what about this? What about this? So they're kind of like forcing the client to take this through to detailed design, whereas it's no longer just a strategy to get through planning. They want it in detailed design level. So that the client initially had a plan done, which was a very traditional drainage strategy with soakaways, etc. But they had a tree with a TPO on it.
Right.
The soakaway would have affected the tree negatively. Just the installation of it would have intruded into the root zone and would have created a problem from that point of view. And then I guess all that additional water might not have been good for the tree, maybe, The water table was pretty low on that site as well. So I don't believe it was the best solution for the job. So we just shaped the landscape to accommodate that water that the attenuation tank would have had. So the client was lucky; they had the space to do that. It was a significantly big plot, but it was a little bit bigger than the average. And we saved the tree, which is a good thing. Nothing was done in and around the tree, and then excess water, went through a head wall into a ditch. The client, that was kind of just on the outside of the client's property that they were allowed to use.
So who do you interact with then? Because what I'm trying to get at, John, for the listeners, what I'm trying to lead you towards here is that a bit like our motto, which is trees first, not last, this is something that if you think it's going to be a concern, it really needs to be dealt with early on in the design process.
Exactly, because it's going to hold up planning.
Yeah.
It will hold up the planning process. And so now the architect is having to revisit certain elements of the site to accommodate what needs to be done for the drainage. So had that been done at the beginning, had we had the opportunity to right at the beginning work with the architect, work with the client from that point of view, and say, well, this is what we're proposed, this is what will work, this is what won't work, and then having that, it would have all just been done at once, would have all gone, all of that communication at the beginning with the LPA, understanding what they want, I
Because
think,
I mean, that is exactly our experience, and I
yeah.
expected that was going to be the answer that you would give. Is that
Mm.
quite often, if we're coming late to the project, we're seen as being the bad guys because we're essentially saying, well, actually, no, you can't have your double garage there because it's too close to a tree or whatever it
Mm.
might be. And I guess, if you've got to dig a sud space, and it's exactly the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
Got to find the room for that on site ultimately. So.
Yeah.
One thing else that I wanted to touch on, because this comes up all the time for us, and we're constantly being asked about it, and we refer these people to you because we know that you are an expert in your field, and that is nutrient neutrality. Explain to me, John, as if I'm a 5-year-old, well, maybe a 10-year-old, what is nutrient neutrality as it relates to planning applications, and what do people have to do?
Um, so, in a nutshell, as simple as possible, there are certain protected areas within the UK. Within those catchments, any additional development, housing development, holiday accommodation, anything that accommodates overnight stay.
As the old team's kicking off.
Oh yeah, someone's not getting the message. So the where was I? So yeah, you have a catchment, the protected area within that catchment. Additional nutrient comes from overnight stay. That's how they've calculated it. So basically, you have a baseline. Any additional population into that catchment is now going to lift that baseline. So what you have to do is you have to mitigate what you're adding. So if we're adding here, we've got to subtract somewhere else.
Right.
And so that is what nutrient neutrality is that whatever you're adding, you're subtracting to maintain the baseline.
So it's a bit like BNG for water, essentially. Then.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty
Yeah.
much, yeah.
Okay. And what sort of problems can that potentially throw up for sort of your average size development if they've been asked to provide this? Or maybe there aren't any problems.
Finding the finding a mitigation strategy that will work for them.
Right.
So in the very beginning, a lot of the LPAs, when they started out, I guess they were following the lead of the EA. Yeah, we're going to provide credits. Don't worry, crack on, do it. There was like no forewarning. It was just doof. It was, you're doing it now. The LPAs were, I feel sorry for the LPAs because they were caught. They were completely blindsided. They followed the narrative that they were given, and then 12, 18 months, 24 months down the road, they've still no closer to a strategy of being able to provide credits for developers to purchase. And so there were quite a few LPAs, certainly ones that we dealt with, where they had to say, we're putting everything on hold because we can't provide the strategies to mitigate, to provide credits for you to buy. So I would say one of the sort of LPAs that I think were kind of leading in the way was Somerset.
Right.
Yeah, they were quite proactive.
That makes a lot of sense given the topography of Somerset, I guess.
Yeah, so they were pretty proactive in terms of working with developers on how to provide solutions. So I'm quite proud in saying that we came up with a solution that is now widely used around the country.
Yeah.
And that is using a septic tank, upgrading it to a package treatment plant as a means of mitigating, creating credits that you can then use to mitigate what you're doing on site.
And that, John, is a brilliant way to kind of wind up your expertise. So as we sort of end this chat about all things water design, irrigation, SUDS, nutrient neutrality, I can't even say it, nutrient neutrality, and all that kind of good stuff. If the listeners or the watchers want to get in contact with you, what is the best way to do that? How can they get in contact with you?
I'd say through the website. We have contact forms for each of our various disciplines. So fill out a contact form and that goes straight into our system, and that, or pick up the phone, give us a call.
Excellent. And what we will do is we will pop John's details in the description on both the podcast and the YouTube video as well, folks. So go and check John out. Those guys can definitely help you if you are struggling with any of that kind of thing. So John, thanks a lot. I don't want to keep you for any longer. It's been fantastic to have you on the podcast. Certainly educated me a little bit around this kind of stuff, which we stumble across, but we're not experts in by any account. So thank you very much. And to everybody else, we'll see you next week.